The backbone of German divisional artillery during World War II was the legendary 10.5 centimeters leFH 18. Introduced before the war in the 1930s, this light field howitzer became the most widely used artillery piece in the Wehrmacht. By 1939, it was already deployed across German infantry divisions and would remain in service until the end of the war in 1945. The leFH 18 fired 105 high explosive shells, smoke rounds, and occasionally armor-piercing ammunition. With a maximum range of around 10.6 kilometers in its early versions, it provided German forces with reliable indirect fire support. Later upgraded variants, like the leFH 18M, extended its range using a muzzle brake and improved propellant charges. What made this weapon so important was its balance between mobility and firepower. It could be horse-drawn early in the war, and later towed by half-tracks such as the SD. KFCF-11. Despite weighing over 2,000 kilograms, trained crews could deploy it relatively quickly. During campaigns in Poland, France, the Soviet Union, and North Africa, the leFH 18 delivered devastating artillery barrages. On the Eastern Front especially, it became essential in countering Soviet infantry waves and defensive positions. By war's end, over 11,000 units had been produced. It remains one of the most iconic German artillery pieces of War II, symbolizing the standard firepower of German infantry divisions. The powerful 15 centimeters SFH-18 was Germany's primary heavy divisional artillery piece. Firing massive 150 mm shells, it provided deep fire support beyond the capabilities of lighter guns. Weighing over 5,500 kilograms, this artillery piece required motorized transport or multiple horse teams. Its maximum range exceeded 13 kilometers, delivering crushing high-explosive shells capable of destroying bunkers and fortified positions. The leFH 18 played a major role on the Eastern Front, where its firepower was often used to break through Soviet defensive lines. It was also deployed in North Africa and Western Europe. Despite its power, the weapon had drawbacks. It was heavy and slower to reposition. However, Germany compensated with strong artillery coordination and pre-planned bombardments. More than 7,000 were produced, making it one of the most important heavy artillery systems of Nazi Germany. Few weapons are as legendary as the 8.8 centimeters FlaK 36. Originally designed as an anti-aircraft gun, it became one of the most feared anti-tank and field artillery weapons of World War. The 88 mm gun could engage aircraft at high altitudes, but gained fame in North Africa, under General Rommel, where it destroyed Allied tanks at long range. Its high velocity and accuracy made it deadly against both air and ground targets. It could fire armor-piercing rounds capable of penetrating heavy armor. Used across every front, the 88 inches symbolized German engineering excellence and versatility. The 7.5 centimeters leJ 18 was one of the most important close-support artillery weapons used by the German army during World War II. Unlike large field guns that operated far behind the front lines, this infantry gun was designed to fight alongside foot soldiers, often just a few hundred meters behind, advancing or defending troops. Introduced in 1932, the leIG 18 fired 75 mm shells and was optimized for high-angle fire. This allowed it to hit enemies hidden behind buildings, trenches, hills, and fortifications, targets that flat trajectory guns struggled to engage. Its primary ammunition included high-explosive rounds, smoke shells, and later hollow charge rounds capable of damaging light armored vehicles. One of the greatest strengths of the leJ 18 was its relatively light weight. At just under 400 kilograms, it could be manhandled by its crew across difficult terrain. In mountain warfare, urban combat, and forests, especially on the Eastern Front, this mobility proved invaluable. German infantry units relied on it heavily during street fighting in places like Stalingrad, where short-range, precise firepower was essential. The gun's range was limited compared to larger artillery, but this was intentional. It was never meant to replace divisional artillery. Instead, it filled the critical role of immediate fire support, responding quickly to battlefield threats without waiting for long-range artillery coordination. Throughout the war, thousands of leGI 18 guns were produced. Despite later attempts to replace it with more advanced models, it remained in service until 1945 due to its reliability and effectiveness. The 7.5 centimeters leGI 18 represents Germany's emphasis on integrating artillery directly into infantry tactics. The 15 centimeters Nebelwerfer 41 marked Germany's entry into large-scale rocket artillery warfare during World War II. Unlike traditional artillery guns, this weapon fired rockets instead of shells, delivering devastating area bombardments rather than pinpoint accuracy. The Nebelwerfer 41 consisted of 6 launch tubes mounted on a wheeled carriage. Each tube fired a 150 mm rocket filled with high explosive or chemical payloads. When launched, the rockets produced a terrifying howling sound, earning the weapon nicknames like Screaming Mimi among Allied troops. The psychological impact alone was often enough to disrupt enemy morale before the rockets even landed. Originally developed for smoke and chemical warfare, the Nebelwerfer quickly evolved into a powerful battlefield weapon. It was used extensively on the Eastern Front, where German forces needed rapid saturation fire against massed Soviet infantry formations. Though less accurate than conventional artillery, its strength lay in overwhelming large areas in seconds. However, the weapon had weaknesses. The smoke trails of the rockets revealed the launcher's position almost immediately, forcing crews to relocate quickly after firing. This made Nebelwerfer units highly dependent on mobility and coordination. Despite these limitations, the Nebelwerfer proved highly effective in both offensive and defensive roles. It was cheaper and faster to produce than traditional artillery and required less precision manufacturing. By the later years of the war, rocket artillery became a vital component of German firepower. The 15 centimeters Nebelwerfer 41 symbolizes the shift towards psychological and saturation warfare in World War II artillery doctrine. The 21 centimeters Nebelwerfer 42 was a larger and more destructive evolution of Germany's rocket artillery program. Designed to deliver heavier payloads over longer distances, it significantly increased the destructive power of German rocket barrages. Unlike its 150 mm predecessor, the Nebelwerfer 42 fired massive 210 mm rockets. Each rocket carried a powerful high-explosive warhead capable of flattening buildings, trench systems, and troop concentrations. The launcher typically featured 5 tubes, trading quantity for raw destructive force. This weapon was particularly effective in defensive operations. German forces used it to break up enemy assaults before they reached the main defensive lines. On the Eastern Front, it was employed against large Soviet troop formations, where its wide-area destruction was most effective. However, accuracy remained limited, and like all Nebelwerfer systems, it revealed its firing position immediately. Enemy counter-battery fire was a constant threat. As a result, crews were trained to fire and relocate rapidly, often under intense pressure. Despite its drawbacks, the Nebelwerfer 42 delivered devastating results when used correctly. It represented Germany's attempt to match and counter the massive Soviet Katyusha rocket systems. The 21 centimeters Nebelwerfer 42 stands as one of the most powerful rocket artillery weapons fielded by Germany during World War II, emphasizing raw firepower and battlefield shock. The massive 12.8 centimeters FlaK 40 was one of the most powerful anti-aircraft artillery systems deployed by Germany during World War II. Designed to counter high-altitude Allied bombers, this weapon represented the extreme end of German heavy air defense engineering. Firing a 128 mm shell weighing over 26 kilograms, the FlaK 40 had an effective ceiling of more than 14,000 meters. It was capable of engaging heavy bombers flying at extreme altitudes, including American and British strategic bombing formations targeting German cities and industrial centers. Due to its enormous weight, over 12 tons in its transport configuration, the FlaK 40 was rarely mobile in practice. Instead, It was most commonly installed in fixed defensive positions, including reinforced concrete emplacements and the famous FlaK towers defending Berlin, Hamburg, and Vienna. The gun required complex fire control systems, radar coordination, and large crews to operate efficiently. Despite the sophistication, its sheer firepower made it one of the most feared anti-aircraft weapons of the war. When fired in coordinated batteries, it created dense flak barrages that forced bomber formations to break apart. Although it was highly effective defensively, production costs and logistical challenges limited the number built. Even so, the 12.8 centimeters FlaK 40 symbolized Germany's desperate attempt to defend its airspace during the later years of the war. The long-range 17 centimeters K-18 was one of Germany's most powerful conventional artillery guns. Designed for deep bombardment, this 170 mm weapon could strike targets at ranges exceeding 29 kilometers, making it ideal for counter-battery fire and strategic bombardment. The K-18 featured a long barrel mounted on a complex carriage system that allowed it to be transported in 2 separate loads. This was necessary because the gun was extremely heavy, requiring motorized towing units and extensive setup time. Its primary role was to destroy enemy artillery positions, supply depots, bridges, and defensive fortifications far behind the front lines. On the Eastern Front, it was often used in counter-battery roles against Soviet heavy guns. The 17 centimeters K-18 fired high-explosive shells capable of devastating impact. Its accuracy and range made it one of the most respected long-range artillery pieces in the German arsenal. However, like many heavy artillery systems, mobility was a challenge. It required significant logistical support and was not suitable for rapid advances. Nevertheless, when properly positioned, it delivered overwhelming firepower. The formidable 21 centimeters Mörser 18 was designed to deliver massive explosive shells against heavily fortified positions. Firing 210 mm projectiles, this artillery system combined high-angle fire capability with destructive power. Despite being called a Mörser, or mortar, it was technically a heavy howitzer capable of both high and medium angle fire. Its shells weighed over 110 kilograms and could demolish bunkers, fortifications, and urban structures. Like the 17 centimeters K-18, the Mörser 18 used a dual transport system due to its weight. Once deployed, it became a powerful siege weapon capable of crushing enemy defensive lines. The weapon was used extensively during major offensives on the Eastern Front and in siege operations. Its impact could devastate concentrated enemy positions, making it highly effective during planned assaults. While impressive in firepower, it suffered from limited mobility and slow redeployment times. Nevertheless, the 21 centimeters Mörser 18 represented Germany's heavy artillery doctrine, emphasizing devastating blows against strategic targets.